you want to use it. I come on here every week, Wednesday at 4 o'clock, and speak with veterinarians and healers that I want to bring to you so that you can learn and educate yourself to help protect your animals. So I'm Carrie Hyde. If you don't know, I'm your host. And with me tonight is the very famous, very fabulous, very amazing, very passionate. I could go on with a million other adjectives. But basically, she is an acupuncturist. She's a veterinarian. She's holistic in the true sense of the word. And so I'm always really, really happy to be able, it's such a joy to have Dr. Judy Morgan on the show. So Dr. Morgan, welcome. Hi.
Oops, I got to turn the sound off on my phone. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. I'm looking a little disheveled. It's been one of those days of racing around like a crazy person, but what day isn't like that?
What day isn't? It's a lot of work to try to get this information. There's so much valuable information. I always, even for me, and I'm not nearly as busy as you are, but I'm like every day brings, I don't know, but every day brings more information that I feel, oh my gosh, do people know this? Do people know that? So I can only imagine for you, just the sheer amount of information that you want to try to get out there. So I'm just blessed to have you here. I'm sure it is always a crazy day for you. And then we just found out, Dr. Morgan just told me that there's a possibility she's going to be able to do this in Spanish. So they're going to get translators. Like, how awesome is that going to be? I'm excited about that because.
Well, so my team decided that we should have my live videos translated into Spanish and put on like the Spanish YouTube channel, which I didn't even know there was such a thing. Because apparently I have a big following in Brazil. Who knew? Wow. And actually following of a lot of veterinarians down there. And I do get emails from other veterinarians who are either holistic or learning to be holistic or want to be holistic. As a matter of fact, I get quite a few every week from veterinarians, which is great. The fact that we are starting to reach some veterinarians as well as the pet owners. I mean, that's really, really, really what we want. We want to open the eyes of more veterinarians to what's going on. And I got an email today. So Gwen posted on our Facebook today a video from a year ago with little Obi, who's the little Cocker Spaniel who started having seizures after a dose of NexGard Spectra. And nobody believed him, the veterinarians, the neurologists, like everybody was like, oh, it's coincidence that your 4-month-old puppy just started randomly having these horrible seizures, had nothing to do with the NexGard Spectra, because they're all in such denial. Yeah. So he was getting no help, and he reached out to Dr. Jean Dodds. He reached out to me. He reached out to Michael Fox. And so between all of us, we made a plan for this little dog. And at one point he was taking 4 different anti-epileptic drugs. And so here we are a year later, he's finally weaned off all the drugs and seizure free. Wow. But it took the work of all those minds coming together. So the owner is really awesome. And I think he works in computers. I don't think he knew anything medical. And over time, he has researched so much about this. And so he sent me a video today that he put together of Obi's journey over the year and his journey with him. And it includes the seizure videos. So, it includes a lot of scientific studies and links. And this is exactly how, and it has things in there like, when a reaction happens or something occurs within 24 hours of giving a new drug, how can so many veterinarians deny that there is any connection between the two? So the new video that he's made, he sent it to me first for us to look at and critique, and we're hoping to release that and get it everywhere. Yeah, and we want to get it to traditional veterinarians. We want them to at least start to think, what's going on. So, very cool. So we're working on that.
That is so, that's going to be huge. And I know it's hard to watch an animal have a seizure. And I know people are going to be just it's hard to watch. But if we don't say it and we don't show it, then we can't make the change. So I just want to welcome all of you guys who are coming in. I'm so excited that you're here. Dr. Morgan is just so free with her time with all of us. So it's really great. So we'll start getting into some of these questions, and then there's some stuff we want to talk about, but I'm so glad you brought up, because Dr. Morgan spoke at our event, Redefining Health, about the 10 worst drugs to give your animals. And now she's diving deeper into it in their spooky drugs series that they're doing. And so please make sure you guys get on that, because she was explaining to me, well, why don't you explain to them about how deep you're going with this and how you're, because it's going to make a difference.
Yeah. So when I did the talk at the Redefining Health event, I think I had like 45 or 50 minutes to get through everything. So I had slides and I touched on everything really, really, really fast. Well, now we are spread, because there were 10 drugs or categories. We're spreading it out over 10 days on our Facebook Lives this week and next week. And each day is like a half an hour spent on the individual thing that I had to fly through. So I got like 4 minutes in my talk there.
Sorry.
And that's okay. And then in addition to talking about the side effects and problems and things to look for and questions to ask, we're also giving you alternatives to those drugs. So like today we talked about trilostane, which is used for Cushing's disease. And then we also posted the link to our Cushing's disease guide, which has the alternative therapies that most holistic veterinarians will use. So, and every holistic veterinarian is going to have a slight tweak on the treatment. And obviously, if I could see the dog in person, I would, hone the herbal therapy and the food therapy more specifically for the condition of the individual animal, because we know that not one size fits all for anything, right, but at least gives you a direction to go in. So
yeah. No, it's huge. It's really, really, because that's the biggest thing. People are like, okay, then what do I do? What
exactly? And that was the big thing at this fall. Everybody was like, okay, what do I do? I'm like, well, if you give me 3 more days, I'll give you all those answers.
Yeah. No, it's great. I think it's really great. I just got a phone call today from a really good client of mine, and I got to dive in a little bit deeper, because I got the phone call, but one of my receptionists talked to her, but she brought her golden retriever in for some limping. They weren't really sure what it was. And so the vet gave her some form of an anti-inflammatory that I don't know what it is. And the dog died like 5 days later. And so I got to dive
Perforated
deeper.
ulcer, probably.
What?
Perforated ulcer, most likely, if it was an NSAID in 5 days.
So I'm going to dive deeper into it, but it's why I bring this, because we have to be more, we think, oh, it's just an anti-inflammatory and I don't have to do any more search and research and all that kind of stuff. So, but let's get to some of your guys' questions. So Susan says that she has a Yorkie. She does better uncooked than raw. Can you give her thoughts on purchasing raw lightly cooked versus purchasing lightly cooked? Like if she cooks it, or if
so it depends on the company. Like I know that Viva Raw uses so when the raw food is ground, if it has bone in it, as it goes through the grinder, there's a plate on the end. So I have a big grinder that I use, and there's the plates that go on the end as the food is pushed through the grinder has different size holes. And depending on the size of the hole, that's going to be how finely ground the bone is. So I know like All Provide, they sell gently cooked or raw. It's the same exact recipe, but they'll steam it, basically gently cook it for you. So you can buy it already cooked, or you can buy their raw product and you can cook it yourself. When we go to events and our booth is next to theirs, Dennis always has his little hot plate and a frying pan, and he's sauteing food and eating it and handing it out all day long. And when the person who's making your dog's food is willing to eat it themselves, that tells you it's a good product. Viva Raw, they had originally said don't cook theirs, and they changed up their grinding process, and now they absolutely can be gently cooked. So it's either way that you want to do it, Suzanne. We have to be a tiny bit careful with cooked fats. So you want to cook them either at a low heat or do like a sous vide or a steam cooking type thing. And that tends to be the best way to feed it. So, but you could do it either way. You could buy it already gently cooked, because I think like Evermore and Raised Right, I think those are gently cooked human grade foods as well. It's up to you. Just if you are going to cook a raw product, definitely check with the bone size.
Yeah. Raised Right uses eggshell instead of bone. I think that's why they can
Okay.
gently cook it, because they're using an eggshell. And there's a couple of companies I know do that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's always a big question. That's a good question, because that is one thing people don't even know to ask. They buy a raw food, then they go home and they want to heat it up or cook it, and then they don't understand. I just had that happen with a guy, and he's like, I don't know what's going on. And then he just suddenly tells me that he's cooking this. He was cooking Bones and Co. And I'm like, why would you do that? And he says, well, I don't know. I wanted to give it to her warm. So I just thought I'd cook it. I'm like, you're ruining everything. And
Well,
Bones and Co.
it's really funny when I finally convinced my mom to feed her dog raw food instead of kibble. The dog hated it. She hated the texture. And a lot of dogs don't recognize the texture of raw food. And actually that dog lived to 17 and a half, and she never liked her raw food, like raw. So I went to my mom's house one day, and she was out on her grill with the round patty of the frozen raw dog food, grilling the patty. And I'm like, it's not a hamburger. You can't do that.
It's hard when you're trying to teach people, right? We don't like, I didn't.
Well, it never dawned on me that she would do that. But, my mother does things like this so that I can turn around and go, yeah, I probably should tell people not to do that.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what happens, because we don't know what we don't realize what they're going to do with it. So here's a really, really great question, Linda. She says, regarding the efficacy of phenobarbital being taken with tapeworm medication. She said she called the company and all they could say is it's safe. How do you feel about that?
Who knows? I mean, I personally would have to look up the interactions of praziquantel and phenobarbital. I mean, with tapeworm medication, it's usually a one-time deal. So it should be out of their system literally in 24 hours. So if anything, you're screwing up your phenobarbital for a short period of time. But it is something that I would go on drugs.com or, some other, maybe even look at the drug inserts for phenobarbital. I'm sure you can find a ton of phenobarbital because it's a human medication. And actually, tapeworm medicine, praziquantel, is also used in people. So, I mean, that's just something I would put in the search engine. Is there an interaction? Because if you have a pet who is on, took mine to Walgreens pharmacy to say I missed it.
She said that when she went to Walgreens, they told her that it was safe, but less effective.
Which was less effective? I lost the
phenobarbital was less effective if she took it with the tapeworm.
So it's probably binding it. Yeah, the two drugs are probably they're probably using the same receptors, and so lowering the efficacy of the phenobarb. I mean, again, the praziquantel should be a one-time deal. I mean, we don't keep them on chronic tapeworm medication. So
is there something else she could give for tapeworm?
Not really. I mean, unless you did some of the natural therapies. So there's a lot of, I know ground pumpkin seed is used a lot of times. Black walnut tinctures can be used. We're actually getting in from Dr. Connor Brady. We are importing his products from Ireland, and he actually does have a natural deworming product in his group of things that he is making. So that should hopefully be here. His entire product line we should have within the next couple of weeks. So exciting new stuff coming in.
She said that it was actually the dewormer that was less effective because of the phenobarbital. I thought it was the other way around.
Okay.
So that's interesting. Doing some of these natural stuff like the black walnut and might help that, like kind of putting them both in there. I don't know, but good question. From where now I lost it, from Sam. Do you know if there is a natural product for paralysis ticks here in Australia?
So, I saw some people post questions on, because Holistic Vet UK reposted our spooky drug stuff. And so a lot of people were saying, well, I'm in Australia. What do we do for paralysis ticks? And I actually said that what I want to do is reach out to Ian Billinghurst and Matthew Muir, who are both holistic veterinarians in Australia. I'm sure you could go to their websites and you could ask them yourself, but I want to find out what they are doing in their country. I mean, me personally, I would still be looking to use essential oils and diatomaceous earth and, all kinds of different things. But I'm not from Australia, so I'm not as familiar. I can list the products that we use here, but I don't know what you have over there. So I'm going to reach out to them. I wish I had a pen and I would write that down. Anyway, I'm going to reach out to them and find out what they recommend in their country, because obviously different problems. I'm sure that holistic veterinarians over there, I've got to believe they are not recommending isoxazolines. I can cross my fingers that I get the right answer on that.
I know, right? I know. Please tell us, because I mentioned at the event we did that I did a lot of traveling outside of the country, but it was in Europe. I didn't get to go to Australia, but it was different. It was definitely different how things happened in different countries. So it'd be interesting to hear what happens in Australia if they're using this toxic stuff.
I'll see if I can get an interview with maybe with Matthew Muir. He wanted to do a little bit of work together, so maybe I'll see if we can get an interview with him and get his thoughts on what to do in Australia.
Yeah, it would be really cool because, people are listening to you all over the world, and it is different. That's the hard part. Even for me as a boarding facility, people ask me stuff and I have to say, well, I don't know what happens in Georgia. I only, it is what it is. So, Colleen, my dog has a left peripheral nerve. Is this sheath tumor?
Yeah, nerve sheath tumor.
Yeah. What is best natural product for inflammation and pain? She's tapering off prednisone. Will be fine with Friday.
All right, so we're using CBD chews and arnica, which is great. I really like the PEA, the palmitoyl ethanolamide. It's on our website as PEA. It's a human product, but it's a plant-based product that actually binds to pain receptors and works really, really well for nerve pain. The other thing that works well that's not holistic but works for nerve pain is gabapentin. So, and that's why gabapentin is used so much for syringomyelia, caudal occipital malformation syndrome pain in the brachycephalic dogs, because it works at the level of the nerve root. So if I had to go with a traditional, I'd go gabapentin. If I wanted to do more natural, then I would use the CBD along with the PEA, the arnica. kind of the things that you're doing.
Ooh, Nikki, this one's hard for me to even read. I don't know. I'll read it. But her 9-year-old German Shepherd had cancer, and both her specialist and her personal vet had her dog on 17 pills a day. And then she just found out that her German Shepherd now has hip dysplasia. She doesn't want to do the medication. I don't blame you. Any suggestions on what she can do for this?
Yeah. So Nikki, go to my website, drjudymorgan.com, and get the blog, or maybe Lori can type it in, the blog Treating Arthritis Naturally. Tons of things you can do. You can do stem cell therapy. You can do PRP, which is platelet therapy. You can do cold laser therapy. You can do physical therapy, acupuncture, chiropractic helps a lot with those dogs. And then all kinds of supplements that we talk about. I love the deer antler velvet. I love green lip mussel for any kind of joint problems. We did use in my practice, it's, again, not totally holistic, but it is a building block for cartilage, which is, let's see, in Canada, it's called Cartrafin. Adaquan injections. We used it a lot and never had problems with it. Again, not necessarily a holistic therapy. So tons of options, really tons of options.
I just want to point out how great you guys are that are listening to this, because look at all this information they're plugging for you. Jay, thank you very much. Like, they're plugging stuff in. Lori can't even keep up. She's trying to do all of this information. But not only that, I noticed that people in Australia are commenting stuff on try this, do this tick remover, this kind of stuff. So you guys are great. Thank you. It takes a pack of us to make this happen. Hi, Jay. How are you? Okay. It was reading on here about this. This is interesting. Is there a natural fungal medication? Her vet says that traditional fungal they're talking about amputating this dog's toe. So for a fungal infection, what would you suggest?
Traditional fungal medication doesn't have a good success rate. They want to amputate the toe, but he's 10. I wouldn't worry about the anesthesia. And I'm thinking if he's got, if you live in the Midwest and you have it's Gene Lashley. You don't live in the Midwest. You live in New Jersey. I know who Gene is. And that's a big dog. So I'm like, he's 10. I'm not worried about anesthesia. He's a big dog. Really? Yeah, so we need to be, we have to be worried. We got to find something. I feel like there's a million things we can do for that, Gene. Email me. I have to think about that one for a little bit and do a little research. But I'm feeling like there's a million things we could do with that. Like, first of all, I'd work on the immune system, gut health and colostrum and that sort of thing. What fungus do you have in the toe? That is way too weird. Yeah. Are you sure it's just a fungus? And if it's just one toe, like, is it not potentially a cancer of the nail bed? I'd be, when it's one toe, I'd be more worried. Like, if you had an x-ray of that, I'd be really worried that we have a nail bed cancer. They don't randomly get a fungal infection on one toe.
I'm not a veterinarian at all, but I see a lot of toenail fungus. I've never seen just one toe.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all in between the feet and the.
Yeah. So that is way too weird. Because I'm thinking he's an old dog. At 10, I mean, I know who he is, and at 10 and the size he is, he's a senior. So I'd be more worried that we've got something else going on. Send me pictures, Dean.
Here's a good question. We kind of talked a little bit about this the other day. Her dog trainer is asking for them to get an influenza vaccine. Her pup is 16 weeks. Your thoughts on this vaccine?
Hate it, wouldn't use it, never had it in my practice, don't recommend it. Is that enough?
I think it's enough. I don't require that at my boarding facility. I don't recommend it. I don't require it. I don't want it in my place at all. I don't like it.
Yeah. And why is the dog trainer, like, are you in a dog training group where all the dogs are confined indoors and 30 dogs at a time? Like, we had a big outbreak a couple years ago down in Georgia at a dog show because the judge, instead of asking the owner to open the mouth to show the bite, the judge opened the mouth and then went from dog to dog and opened a bunch of mouths and spread it from dog to dog. And then as those dogs went to other dog shows, then there was just like this huge outbreak that occurred, mostly in the Southeast. And even the holistic veterinarians in Florida were starting to use the influenza vaccine because, I mean, we knew there was a big outbreak and there were some dogs. I think there were like 8 dogs that died. But as a general rule, influenza is not a big deal. So unless there's a huge outbreak occurring right in your area, I absolutely no.
Just real quick, Jean says they didn't do an x-ray on the toe. So there has been no x-ray. So
get some work on that toe and then talk to me.
This is why we talked to Dr. Morgan.
He knows how to get a hold of me.
I know, but it's like, I wouldn't even, I mean, yeah, it's awesome. So we have another one. She has a male Yorkie, has narcolepsy. His tongue is always out. Do you think this is a side effect?
Usually when the tongue is out, it's because they don't have enough teeth to hold it in. So is your dog missing any teeth? Or does he have any kind of paralysis? So my little English toy George, one side of his head is paralyzed, so he can't blink and he can't move that ear. And he looks like he's smiling on that side all the time. He had an MRI. Nobody can figure out why he's doing it. We think it's part of his SMCM cervical discs. And so now his tongue is starting to lull. This has been going on for years, but now his tongue is starting to not work as well and it's starting to hang out. So you've either got some nerve damage or you don't have enough teeth.
So one thing that would be really helpful is what vaccines and what protocol do you recommend? Like how often as puppies and what do you recommend? Because we know you don't recommend Bordetella or the flu vaccine, but what ones do you recommend?
Okay. So Suzanne is just answering me, not paralyzed at all, and he's a puppy with all of his teeth. Well, that's good. I have seen dogs that have actually an extra long tongue that actually doesn't fit in their mouth every once in a while. So vaccine protocols. Interestingly, Forrest is my first dog that literally has had nothing. He had 2/10 of it. Well, not totally nothing. He had 2/10 of a cc of a distemper vaccine and 2/10 of a cc of a parvo vaccine when he was about 10 and 12 weeks old. That's all he's ever had, and that's all he's ever going to get. But he lives a very sheltered existence, so not worried about him. In my practice, what I had gone to, if I had a pet owner who got a new puppy or kitten and they could, let them lead that sheltered existence, which is a little bit hard because you also want to socialize them. So what you do is you socialize them with healthy dogs that family members or friends have that you know are fine. So we would give one plain distemper vaccine, and this is the hardest thing, getting your vet to get a plain vaccine. A plain distemper vaccine at about 12 weeks, and then a plain parvo vaccine at 14 to 16 weeks, depending on the breed. And then we would do a titer at 20 weeks. And if they were good to go, they're good to go. If one of them came back low, then we would boost only what needed to be boosted. Rabies, I would do at 6 months. And then we'd come back at their annual physical. So it'd be like at 16 months of age, and do titers and see where we were. And what I found was the later we gave that first vaccine, the stronger the titers were. And that study has been shown by many immunologists. Ron Schultz has done a lot of work with that. Dr. Rob has done work with that. So that's what as we were giving less vaccines and giving them a little later, we were getting better protection. For people who kind of couldn't do that, couldn't wrap their head around that, had, whatever reason they couldn't do that, then I would still try to hold off as long as possible. Maybe and if you can't get your vet to get a single ingredient vaccine, then we would do a DAP, which is distemper hepatitis parvo, and do one at around 10 weeks and one around 14 weeks. And then again, titer at around 20 weeks. And then I still like to hold off the rabies, depending on the breed, 6 to 12 months. But it also depends on exposure. Do you have to get them on an airplane? Do you have to get them into boarding, grooming, daycare, kennel, whatever? So, it's a sliding scale for every animal based on their lifestyle. I rarely gave lepto vaccines. We were talking about that last night, that, now that's become mandatory where you are. It's been mandatory in the UK. My dogs have never had a Bordetella vaccine. They've never had a lepto vaccine. Their last rabies vaccine was probably, I don't know, 6-7 years ago. And we do titers. And, I don't even titer anymore because my dogs literally don't go anywhere and I don't need proof of anything. The reason to do the titer is, one, to make sure that they're protected. And then, we get into the whole discussion with titers. Sometimes you just get positive or negative from some labs, and others will give you a number, and they'll say, well, in order to be protected for parvo, it has to be 1 to 80, and your dog came in at 1 to 20. Therefore, you should give a vaccine. Depending on which immunologist you ask, a lot of them say any titer is a positive titer. Their body knows it's there. Their body has memory cells, and if they get exposed, they'll produce immunity. So there's just so much we don't know about immunity. And, until the past few years, it was just vaccinate them every year. And then we all started asking questions. Well, some of us started asking questions.
Not enough of you started asking questions.
Yeah. So I don't, you cannot be a little pregnant is how I look at it. I like that. So that's what I do with my guys. And in my practice, we were really backing down on the vaccines. I hate the Lyme vaccine. I just don't think it does anything at all. And I didn't use influenza. So really, really minimize.
Yeah.
My book, the Needles to Natural book. If for those asking, if you haven't read it, there's a whole chapter in there on vaccines, which goes through all of them, including like the rattlesnake vaccine and all the weird things, talking about, how the diseases are spread, what the risk factors would be. and then how often the vaccines would need to be given if you were in a high-risk area. For instance, lepto is an annual vaccine. There's no sense doing a titer. It only lasts 9 to 12 months, period. That's it. Bordetella lasts 6 to 12 months. That's it, period. Don't do a titer. There is no titer. Lyme vaccine, we don't know how long it lasts, but I had dogs that were showing antibodies, vaccine antibodies 10 years after a single vaccine was given. So we don't know. And distemper parvo, we know that those last for years and years. Rabies, we know it lasts for years and years. So, but anyway, so in that chapter, it talks about how long they last. And if you are in a high risk area or your dog is at high risk for whichever one it is, it tells you kind of how often you would need to give it.
So I know, as the host, I shouldn't be asking questions, but this is along our vaccines. So I just had a vet who vaccinated a dog for rabies, and then the owner was going to be moving to Hawaii, and they're very strict about the rabies protocol. So you not only have to have a wellness check, you have to have a titer and a vaccine. Well, this veterinarian had vaccinated this dog like a year before. And then when they went to do the titer, it was like non-existent. There was nothing.
Really?
So it was really interesting to me because I'm like, how many dogs do you think are running around that the vaccine never worked? And they're all running around with a piece of paper.
But that goes back to the story of my technician who was bitten by the rabid cat, got the whole series of 7 injections, having an anaphylactic reaction every time, having to be hospitalized for every injection. And at the end of it all, she had a titer of 0. But she did not die of rabies. So obviously it worked. So there are some animals that will not generate a measurable titer, but they are protected. So we don't know enough about the immune system for why some of these animals do what they do.
Interesting.
So, but yeah, to get to Hawaii or Australia, it's really, like I used to do international health certificates. I hated international health certificates. Every country is different, and some of them are so incredibly strict about the rabies. And I understand why, but some of them require you have to have had the annual vaccine. And if they've only had the 1 year, then they have to get another one for the 3 year. It doesn't matter if it was 2 weeks ago, you got to get another one. You got to get the titers. I mean, it's crazy.
Oh yeah. Really crazy strict. So Shirley has a little toy Australian Shepherd that has double hip dysplasia. And she says that she's on 3 different medications: gabapentin, meloxidine, and I don't know this one, Cartafren.
Cartafren is the injectable that I was talking about.
And so she wants to know the long-term effects. 10 years.
Oh boy. So meloxidil is Metacam. So that was one of the NSAIDs that I talked about yesterday. It really likes to cause kidney failure and GI ulceration. I never used that one. Gabapentin, before I discovered the PEA, my dogs were on gabapentin for years, and I was able to get them off the gabapentin by using the PEA. And reducing the gabapentin to once a day because he's very agitated at night after I give it to him. Yeah, well, gabapentin it messes around with the neurologic system. So you can get behavior changes. You can get lethargy, depression. People who take gabapentin say it really messes them up. So I was really happy to get my dogs off. Let's see. He can't settle down. Very concerned about him. I'll give him a holistic diet that I make, and he gets all the supplements from Dr. Tobias. Yeah, again, go back to that. Jay posted my natural arthritis treatments. So for hip dysplasia, I would definitely, that's a small dog. It shouldn't be that big of a problem for him. I would be looking at chiropractic care, acupuncture, and all the, natural supplements. So you have Cartafren, but nothing else for the joints. So I'd be looking at green lip mussel. I would be looking at deer antler velvet. And, maybe looking at something like arnica or hypericum. Again, look at that blog. There's a million things in there. There's so many different ways to treat this, and we really want to get them off those drugs. The Cartafren doesn't bother me near as much as the other 2 do.
Wow. Gabapentin. I just had a client, her dog went on gabapentin. Oh my God, he just got so sick off of it. He was just a whole different dog. He's so sick off of it. It was awful. But Patricia wants to know, what are your thoughts on Adaquan? I have 2 dogs with, no, I lost it. Sorry. 1 with joint problems, 2 TPLOs, and luxating patella. Sorry, I lost it on here. But I know there was some luxating patellas. Sorry, I lost it.
Yeah, I don't see it either. They get lost very quickly. So Adaquan is the same as Cartrophin. That's the injection, and basically it's glycosaminoglycans. It's the building blocks for cartilage. So what you're doing is giving this as an injection. So, and it used to be injected, it started out with horses, and it used to be injected directly into the joints, and then, joint infections and all kinds of things. And then they discovered with horses that they could start giving it in the muscle, and they got the same effect. So we didn't have to deal with it, because my show horse that I got as an adult, I bought him with arthritis in his hocks, in his hind legs. And I knew he had it, and they were having him injected a couple times a year. And I said, okay, well, no problem. I'll take him and get him injected. But he had to be sedated every time. And it was a 2-hour drive each way, blah, blah, blah. Then I started doing chiropractic on him, never had to have him injected again. So there's a lot of different things that you can do that can help, but I don't have a problem with the Adaquan injections. Like I said, we use them a lot. They're basically building blocks. Every once in a while, I mean, if you read the inserts on it, they do list some different things to be careful with. It can decrease platelet stickiness. So if your dog has to have surgery, you don't want to give it, within the 2 weeks right before surgery.
I haven't heard of this, but maybe you have. She's thinking about changing. She has her dog on something called WinPro joint supplements, but she's thinking about moving to something called You Move. Are you aware?
Yeah, I mean, they're all going to offer similar things. Like I love hyaluronic acid products for joints. I'm a huge fan of Greenlit Muscle, and I'm a huge fan of Deer Antler Velvet. And if you haven't tried Deer Antler Velvet, I would strongly recommend it. It was interesting when I first got the products and we first started talking about carrying them and branding them. I tried them out on the Monkey's House dogs first. I gave some to Michelle and said, here, I got to make sure this works before I start using it. And she called me a couple of weeks later and said, I don't know what you just gave me, but I've got dogs racing around the field that before were just like, I can't do it. So I'm just a huge fan. We've had really good results. So just keep looking for the right thing that works for your particular dog.
I just want to point out that you got a couple people in here saying they enjoyed so much seeing you here in California, John and Lisa. Yeah, it was so great to get her over here, right? It was a lot of fun. We had another question in here about her dogs developing a lot of thirst.
The increased thirst and urinating. Urine and blood came back normal. I would love to know the age of that dog, but when we have increased thirst and urination, there is heat in the body somewhere. And lab work will not show a lot of cancers. Will not show lymphoma. It will not show hemangiosarcoma. I would be imaging that dog. You've got heat. You've got internal heat. There's something going on. You need to go on a search. Thank you for posting the PEA information. So, I mean, and depending on which lab they use, Denise, if they're using IDEX, you get the SDMA, which will pick up kidney changes much earlier than when the creatinine and BUN start to change. But, saying the urinalysis is normal, was the urine concentrated or was it a dilute urine? Could be something like diabetes insipidus, which is that's a hard one to diagnose. You got to rule out everything else. But I'd keep looking, because the dog is just telling you, I've got something cooking, and I've got something cooking that's not good. So I'd keep looking. Sorry for the bad news, but I would keep looking.
Urinary, that's something, I really dive into. I want to learn more and have you speak more on urinary stuff, because it gets missed a lot about all of the things that it can be. Gail wants to know, she has a big boy on Ondasaquin Advanced for the last 4 years, had bilateral TPLOs, What do you recommend? The surgeon recommended by the surgeon.
Adaquan. Yeah, it's fine.
What's your take
It's
on
fine.
that?
It's fine if it's working for your dog, you can use it. If it's not working, you can certainly add in some other things. Shirley, we have the PEA on our website. And somebody else asked about whether to do Ananda Plus or the PEA. The Ananda Plus is PEA plus the anandamide. I take the Ananda Plus myself because it works really well for my disgruntled bowel. It just decreases inflammation. So we use it for a lot of different things. But yeah, go to drjudymorgan.com, or maybe somebody wants to post a link. We have PEA in there. It's been a huge, and you know what? Nobody knows about it because it started out in Europe, I believe in Denmark. When I wrote the From Needles to Natural book, I actually mentioned PEA in there for the dogs with SM and CM, but you couldn't get it in this country. So I never gave it to my dogs. And then, gosh, like 4 or 5 years later, I was doing a consultation with someone and they said, yeah, should I start my dog on the PEA? And I'm like, well, if you can get it, yeah, let's give it a try. And then I went on a search and I found a company in Pennsylvania that human grade, it's a human product. And I ordered some for my dogs and started giving it to them. And that's when I was able to take them off all their medications for their nerve pain and arthritis. So we got rid of gabapentin, we got rid of omeprazole, we got rid of steroids, we got rid of everything. And so I kept buying it for my dogs. And then finally I was like, let me see if we can get this wholesale and if they'll let us sell it for animals, because they're a human company. And it's probably our biggest seller. It's right up there with the pet platters.
Wow. I love those.
So effective. It's so effective, and there are no side effects with it. I mean, occasionally if you have it, because it's a plant-based product, if you have a severely plant allergic dog, then potentially we've had a couple dogs that get a little itchy. Dogs that already had a bunch of other allergies, but other than that, we've seen nothing. So I've been really happy with it.
One of the things I see with my clients is they try it for too short a period of time. How long do you think it takes something like PEA to work before?
Any sort of natural supplement. So even if you're using like a glucosamine chondroitin, deer antler velvet, any sort of what we call a nutraceutical, it's a nutritional supplement, you've got to give it anywhere from 10 to 30 days to see any kind of changes. And then the real test is, if you're not sure if it's doing much for you, then take them back off and see what things are like without it. If you, like, we had one client who had a cat who had a leg amputation, and the cat kept chewing at the stump, and she tried the PEA, and the cat does not chew the stump as long as it's on PEA.
Wow.
Got rid of the nerve pain.
Because it's the nerve pain. That's amazing. I just think it's important. Can you explain really quick? I think maybe a little bit did, but Lynn, she just wants to know, what exactly is PEA?
Palmitoyl ethanolamide. It's much easier to say.
I can't.
Yeah, it's a plant-based supplement that binds to pain receptors. It's the science behind it is amazing. There's more information about it on, and somebody actually, I think Lori posted something maybe on
Lori
our
did post
website
about
it. But it's basically binding to the pain receptors. And so it's kind of like how CBD works. CBD also binds to cannabinoid receptors, which a lot of those are pain receptors. So it's just highly effective, and particularly for nerve pain. But I'm telling you, for allergies and arthritis and IBD, we're just kind of kicking it around and trying it on a lot of different things. There are specific studies, human studies, some sort of pulmonary fibrosis it's used for, that it's highly effective. For cystitis and chronic urinary tract problems. So they've done a lot of studies in humans, and of course, most of that would translate over. It's a really cool product.
Can PEA be given along with other drugs like CBD?
Yes.
Or like any kind of it's safe to give if you're.
There are no known drug interactions.
Okay, good. because I'm sure there's a lot of people on here that we already know there's people on all sorts of medications, like so at least you can start the PEA and then maybe wean your dog off of the.
That's what I did with mine. I started it and then said, okay, well, they've been on it a couple of weeks. Let me start backing off on the other things. And I took all the drugs out and got no, return to, like the symptoms didn't get worse. Because even with gabapentin, you don't get 100% control. But the symptoms were no worse when I took it away.
That's awesome. So Vivian says that she started giving her dog the Canine Heart Health Program and her stool is very soft. Could it be, I'm guessing she means the green lip muscles. It says the green in the program.
Oh, no, she's probably talking about the dog greens.
Oh, okay.
Is it the 5? I can't see where the question is. The 5. Yes, humans can take PEA. It's a human product. We probably sell as much for humans as we do for animals. The dosage is on our website. PEA has been wonderful along with other things for arthritis in my 13-and-a-half-year-old. She's been on for 2 years. This person says PEA took 4 weeks to see the results. So the high anxiety German Shepherd, acupuncture is not going to work. I did have first you have to get the dog there. I had a really aggressive high anxiety chocolate lab that wanted to kill me every time it came in the office. But the dog had lit granulomas its entire length of one front leg. So infected, so awful. She'd been to 7 different veterinarians. And what we found is that cold laser solved the problem for that dog. And I didn't have to touch the dog. So it was awesome. So the Mr. Owner would kind of hold the head of the dog and I could kind of sneak from behind. And I had an equine laser that was much more powerful than my canine laser. So I didn't have to get any closer than about 6 to 8 inches away from the dog's leg. So I literally could, be at arm's length and we cured that dog. Took quite a few treatments, but it was the first thing that worked. But I would not sedate the dog to go get treatments, but so I would look at all the different things that are in that arthritis blog and say, well, how many of these things can I start layering on for this dog? So what I would say is, kind of pick your top choices that you want to try, and each 3 to 4 weeks, layer on something else depending on how the dog is doing.
Great advice. Here's one. My dog started peeing since yesterday. She is going to the vet. She wants to know what question she's going tomorrow. So good that we got this answered. What urinary test should she ask for?
Started peeing while lying down. So she's leaking urine, incontinence. I actually would get a CBC chem and urinalysis and probably a thyroid. I would do the full workup on the dog. This could just end up being a spay incontinence, but it also could be that the kidneys are having a problem. It could be that we've got a urinary tract infection. It could be old dog incontinence, which could be related to a chiropractic issue. But I would start with, let's just get a workup on this dog. Let's palpate that abdomen really well. You could look for stones, but I doubt that you have a stone problem. Although I did have one leaky dog that we x-rayed. She had a stone this big, like literally it filled her whole bladder. I'm like, of course she's leaking. There's no room for that. There's no. And the weird thing with that little dog was a little Maltese that a friend had adopted. She had a perfect urinalysis. Wow. And we only found the stone because she had a spinal condition and she was thinking about having surgery. So we took an x-ray of the spine and went, how about that?
Interesting. Oh my gosh. See, every dog is different. That's what we talk about. Every single dog, every case is different. There's no two things.
So I would just start with a good workup and then avoid the drug Proin, because if it's an incontinent dog, that's what they're going to want to do. Proin will raise the blood pressure. My dog got double glaucoma and lost both eyes from 1 dose of Proin, so I would not go there.
How do you spell that?
Proin, Proin, also known as PPA or phenylpropanolamine.
Okay, guys.
It's the only drug they have in the traditional. realm.
Lori, maybe you can type that out because I know she's going to the vet tomorrow. So I want to make sure that she has all that information for her. Be prepared. Kim wants to know, is it okay to give heartworm preventatives every 3 months in high risk areas? She's in the Southeast US.
So you are leaving an open window there. The heartworm preventative, if you're talking the traditional stuff like HeartGuard and Interceptor, so ivermectin and milbemycin, are probably good for about 6 weeks. Maybe push, might be 90% effective at 8 weeks. There was a great study called the Safe Heart study that looked at milbemycin as, how long it actually protected dogs. But it was an old study and they take them off the FDA site after 20 years. So it came down a couple years ago. I wish I had printed it out because I reference it in the Needles to Natural book. And so what we did, the protocol that we did for people in my practice who were really worried and wanted to use heartworm preventative, we did a low dose every 6 weeks and only during heartworm season, which Southeast US, it's kind of all the time. I'm in North Carolina. I do not give my dogs heartworm preventative. I do test them and I keep mosquitoes off them. So
yeah.
We don't go near the swamp. We don't play in the woods. We come in at dusk and we use essential oil sprays. So that's how I'm dealing with it.
There's a vet here in Southern California. We don't have as many mosquitoes clearly, but what he says is, if you're really worried about it, let me test your dog every 6 months. And let's just, then if we have heartworm, we'll catch it in enough time and then we'll give the
low dose treatment. Yeah. So, and that is another option, not giving heartworm preventative. And what truly testing should be done every 3 months if you're in a high heartworm area and you're worried about that. So I actually had a few clients who would do that protocol. They would just bring their dogs in every 3 months. We'd run the heartworm test and they were fine. But yeah, what that does is it allows you to catch it really early. So you don't have a big heartworm load and you don't have heart damage, kidney damage, liver damage, and you can jump on it right away.
So you think that's a viable way to, a good, other than he does it with 6 months, probably because it's California.
Yeah. You really have to look at where you live, what the exposure level is, what the danger level is. Are you in a red area, a yellow area, or a green area? How bad is this? So that's what, and like I said, it's individual depending on what you're doing with your dog. Is it a hunting dog that is outside running in the swamps and, in the woods and having a much higher risk? So I have a client I don't know if she's on, Lori, in Ohio. And Ohio's cold. And I'm like, you probably can get away with not having to do that. And she said, well, there is a sanctuary a mile from my house with 50 heartworm positive dogs because they only take in heartworm positive dogs and then they do the treatment. Well, that's a huge reservoir of heartworms. And I went, oh, yeah, you might consider giving heartworm preventative because that's a huge reservoir. Yeah. So, what are your neighbors doing? Do your neighbors have healthy dogs? Are they using heartworm preventative? Is there a high risk in your area of other dogs that might be the source of infection? Because there has to be a source of infection.
That's a really good point. And who would even know that down the street some reservoir was taking in heartworm? That was good of her to do that research. Here's an interesting one. Dr. Morgan, why is hydrolyzed food effective in dogs with IBD? She says it's hard for her to understand how her dog has never had kibble until 2 years old. I think it's not quite sure what she's saying.
So your dog has leaky gut. And the reason, hi, Michelle Allen. The reason that the hydrolyzed protein works is that they shrink the protein molecules are supposed to be broken down, that the body doesn't recognize it anymore as a protein. It only works 50% of the time, by the way.
Well,
highly not recommended.
My dog is being tested for protein in her urine. Haven't heard back about the lab results, and she didn't tell me what it meant if results are high.
Oh, I'm sorry. What was your dog is being tested for protein in urine? Haven't heard back about the lab results. She didn't tell me what it meant if the results are high. Well, basically, getting a test that says we have protein in the urine. All right, that's a diagnostic test, but what's causing it? That's the big question. So do we have high blood pressure? Do we have Cushing's disease? Do we have kidney disease? Why do we have protein in the urine? And so if you get a test back that says, yes, we have high protein, first of all, if they're seeing protein in the urine, then usually they'll do a follow-up test, either a UPC or a microalbumin, to actually see whether it's in the danger zone. Because you can have a urine that is highly concentrated. Let's say it's got a specific gravity of 1050, which is super concentrated, and a protein level of 1+. That's probably negligible because it's so concentrated. And protein will be positive if there's any debris in the urine, red cells, white cells, crystals. They will affect the protein reading on the urine. So that's why you have to do those follow-up tests. Now, if you had 1+ urine in a very dilute urine that was not concentrated at all, like a 1015 specific gravity, that's a bigger problem. So we have to take a lot into account: how concentrated is urine, how much protein is reading. Then we do that secondary test to see whether it truly is significant. So like a UPC should be less than 0.4 or 0.5, depending on the lab you use. So if it comes back as 0.1, nothing. It's a nothing. If it comes back as 0.6, all right, something's causing protein to leak through the kidneys. So we've got to do kidney function tests. We've got to do a blood pressure. Maybe we need to look for something like Cushing's disease, some other problem that's causing that.
So I kept Dr. Morgan way too late the last time I had her because I'm really bad at that. And I promised myself I wasn't going to do it. And we're like right on time. And I want to talk about this really exciting thing that she has. And only 50 people are going to be able to do it. I can't tell you how excited I am to tell you. It hasn't even been announced yet, guys. It won't be announced until tomorrow. So Dr. Morgan, tell us a little bit about this.
I'm not even sure it's going to be announced tomorrow, but sometime this week. So I am leading the Dog Nutrition Summit. I think they call it the Pet Nutrition Summit, but it's Dog Nutrition Summit, with about 25 incredible speakers. And that's going to be the first weekend in November. So there's a sign up for it on our Facebook page. And you can sign up and watch it free over November 4th to the 6th, 7th, something like that. I don't even know the dates. Isn't that terrible? If you want the recordings for later, there's a package, you can buy them. But following the summit, and this will be advertised through the summit, because what they do is they run the summit, and then whoever is leading the summit has to have an offer afterwards. So what I decided to do, because I didn't want to be tied up for months and months, although it's tied me up for months getting it ready, we are doing a 2-day intensive deep dive into feeding your dog based on your dog's TCVM element, so Chinese medicine element personality, looking at what their weaknesses might be. So we are going to talk about how to keep your dog in balance, what to do if they're out of balance from a food standpoint, how to make your own meals. Tons of recipes that are balanced are included in this. It's only 50 people. It'll be done through Zoom. It is live all day Saturday and Sunday. So we're going to, be in our PJs with lots of coffee and like really diving deep into this. Lots of Q&A sessions. But we're going to talk about real world problems for your dogs. Like for the fire element, we're going to talk about heart problems, DCM, and mitral valve disease. For the lung element, we're going to talk about respiratory things like collapsing trachea and laryngeal paralysis. GI, we're going to talk about hot diarrhea and cold diarrhea. And did you know there's a difference? And then we're going to do a module on endocrine disease. So it's a deep dive. First, we'll figure out what your dog's personality is, and then we'll look at what the imbalances in their personality might cause. And then you'll get lists of foods that you can add into their protocol. We'll talk about how to balance diets, how much to feed, how to calculate that kind of stuff. So tons, but it's only going to be available to 50 people. Yeah, and that will be held the November 19th and 20th.
But you can see why it's only going to be 50 people. I mean, your deep dive into each individual person's pet.
Yeah, well, the individual person is going to have to, you're going to get the personality profile to figure, and you can also do this for yourself as well, because this all translates to all species.
Right.
So you'll get the paperwork to try to figure out where your pet's personality is. And then as we move through each module and talk about the different personalities and imbalances, and we'll talk about food energetics and all that kind of thing. As you're working through it, you'll be able to pinpoint a lot better what's going on. So for all these people with these animals with hip dysplasia and arthritis, that's a water element problem that's associated with the kidney. And so how do we fix that using food?
Wow.
So, it's a lot like this is backwards. It's a lot like, I know, because it's backwards. It's a mirror. It's a lot like the yin and yang book, but we're going to dive deeper and a lot more recipes and stuff. So
yeah, and that will be announced in the next couple of days. I said
that'll be announced in the next. You'll get, for any of you who have ever gotten an email from the Pet Summit people, you'll get 50 more. They're a little obnoxious with their emails, but is what it is.
So we have that coming up. We still have the spooky drugs. When does that go again?
Spooky drugs is Monday through Friday this week and next week.
Yeah.
And then I believe, Michelle's still here. Then we are going to start really focusing on senior health because we are very, very close. We've been working on this for over a year. I cannot believe it's been that long. With Michelle Allen from Monkey's House, we are going to release our hospice and palliative care course. And that will have 2 levels. One for just the pet owner who wants to learn everything they can about how to care for their senior pets or their pets suffering with, and I mean, we have cancer, kidney, like we go through every system of the body and have, and then we also will talk about if you want to start something like Monkey's House, how would you do that? How do you get volunteers? What's the importance of a 501c3, fundraising, all that kind of stuff is also, this is a very long, deep dive course. But then we're also going to offer a certification for anyone who wants to be certified as a hospice and palliative care giver. So like a veterinary technician, a veterinarian, anybody who wants to, start offering those kinds of services or to start a hospice, there will be a caretaker certification, and that will include Zoom training with Michelle and I. So that will be small group live training as well.
Oh my gosh. I actually think I'm going to have my staff take that. We don't do hospice per se, but I've noticed in my industry as a boarding facility, a lot of places are no longer taking senior dogs. They won't board them. And so what's happening, if people don't have somebody to stay in their home, which is my recommendation always, I don't think it is a great place for a senior dog to go into a boarding facility, but sometimes there's no option. Right. And so a lot of places won't take them anymore over the age of 10, I'm finding. And so I am taking them, and it is definitely a different, you have to look for different things. And so I am going to have my staff take that class with you guys. Absolutely, for sure. Don't let me forget. When is that?
You'll know when we announce it. Michelle, like I said, it's been over a year. We have worked really hard on this. And our problem is we just hired 2 more staff members. We're just doing so many things and so many projects. And last year we had a staff of Gwen and me. And now we're at like 8 or 9.
I'm so happy. I'm so excited about that because it means that this information is getting somewhere. It's done effectively. It's done passionately. I'm just so blessed. I hope that you guys take over the world. I do. And I hope to help push you out there into the world because I'm serious. I can't watch it anymore. I can't watch these animals suffer. I told you, I just got that call today and I got to find out what happened. Maybe it's nothing, maybe it is, but it's frustrating. But you're also speaking live soon, right?
What?
You also have a live event coming up. Did you say you're going somewhere on Friday?
Oh, we're going to Atlanta. Saturday, I will be in Atlanta, Georgia, at the park for the Rescue Pet Games, I think it's called. I'll provide is having a booth, and they invited us down. So we're doing an Ask the Vet. So, and I'll be there. It's 11 to 5.
Yeah.
So I'll post that as well. But anybody who's in the Atlanta area, if you want to come see us and hang out, I'll be sitting there answering questions all day. I'm hoping it's a nice day.
And it's for a rescue. It's a lot of rescue stuff.
It's It's a rescue dog event, so they're raising funds for rescue dogs, and All Provide I think they were a sponsor last year, but they are the main sponsor this year because they feel really strongly about it. So
good. Yeah, if you guys are in the Atlanta area, please go. Support the rescues. It's hard work. It's hard work. So, all right, guys, I got to let her go. Look, I already still kept her 6 minutes after. So we just got so much to do. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. You guys are amazing. Also helping each other out over here, getting things typed in there. I noticed everybody doing that. I love that. It's such a community of sharing. And it's just,
there you go. It's the Rescue Dog Games at Piedmont Park. Thank you, Kathy.
Oh, yes. See, there you go. People just putting all of this information. My cats are getting a fight on my lap. Sorry. We fight. They got the whole house to fight, and they want to fight on my lap. So anyway, thank you guys so much for being here. Lori is behind the scenes, always typing stuff in also for us. Thank you so much, Lori. And Dr. Morgan, there has to be a better way to thank you. I don't know how to do it, but I hope it comes across how much I just love you and having you be a part of changing the lives of so many animals and people and their animals. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I will.
Where will this live be saved? It'll stay on our Facebook pages. So
it'll be on mine too. So you can rewatch it and listen to all the great information that Dr. Morgan just gave out. So, all right, everybody. Good night.
Good night, everyone.